Yesterday, a handful of outlets had dropped some new hands-on preview gameplay information regarding Liza P Overture, the upcoming DLC for Liza P that is a prequel in terms of the story taking place before the base game story events. It's crazy to think that back in 2021, Round 8 NeoWiz announced Liza P, this moody Souls-like that answered the question that no one had thought of to ask before. What if Bloodborne was actually, Victorian reimagining of basically Pinocchio? And when it launched in 2023, it surprised skeptics and over-delivered in both how great its dark fantasy setting was and how incredibly fun its aggressive combat was. Now, 2 years later, we are going to get a DLC for the game that's going to add a ton of content, new weapons, new bosses, and more. There's a new mode being added to the game called Boss Memories Mode. And as I mentioned, when it comes to Overture in terms of the story lore when it takes place, it's a prequel to the events of Liza P, right before the puppet frenzy starts and robotic trolls massacre everyone in the city of Krat. And as it turns out, many of its ideas for settings, weapons, etc. were actually meant for the base game, but got cut to keep the original release from being too bloated. Round 8 studio game director Juan Choi told IGN in an interview that he and his team weren't content with letting these ideas go undeveloped and unrealized. Through a translator, he described Liza P as finally complete with the addition of Overture. Liza P has always been associated with Bloodborne. I mean, it's hard not for it to be, mostly because of how it looks, but also because the combat in both games adheres to Souls-like traditions, but forgo key behaviors like blocking. Heck, even releasing a big DLC well after launch to put a bow on the original project has become a From Software signature at this point. And the game director has embraced the comparison. Says it's an honor to be compared to From Software. And honestly, it's hard to argue against this not feeling like Bloodborne or being a love letter to Bloodborne. In the gameplay showed off, the first steps you take back in the boots of the titular character P is into the snow-packed region around the Krat Zoo. A building your disembodied guide, Jiminy, seems very confused to see standing in not a pile of embers. Now, obviously, not much spoilers here because story details are light, but the developers are staying tight-lipped about anything we haven't seen so far. I would say the highlight new weapon here is a gunblade. And yes, it looks exactly like the kind Squall Leonhardt would get commissioned for himself. This is one of the few new weapon types in the DLC. It's called the Pale Knight, and its weight and attack pattern is similar to a greatsword. But its heavy attack pulls the trigger and the double barrel firearm attached sends lead screaming at foes. The recoil of these shots push P around, so it can be useful when mixed into attack strings to remain evasive. There's also another trick to it. You can actually fire the weapon again to rocket yourself back towards the bad guys for a big follow-up attack. So basically, it's the most coolest weapon ever made. There's the first ever completely ranged weapon as well in this series that's going to be in the DLC. Simply a bow. It looks to be perfect for poking small enemies from afar, but not that great at making a reasonable mark on larger foes. Now, of course, there might be a way to make it work better with certain either abilities or equipment or something else in here that we are not seeing yet, or something on the skill tree that might be added. Just have to wait and see though, because we don't know. Details are light. There are also these Wolverine-like pair of long claws that shred through enemies with such fury. And this is only a few weapons. There's still a lot more that the devs are being kind of like very quiet about and just holding close to the chest in a sense of what's really in here. But those of us who love customization aspect of the base game have a lot of new toys that smash together in Overture. The new Legion arms also make great new additions. There is a gun one, double-barreled and chargeable to moderate the kind of force spread and impact on the bad guys. It's more of a close-range option, but even at half charge, it made short work of the fodder that roamed around the snowy grounds in the gameplay shown off. At full charge, it's a reliable tool to stun bigger foes, or at least interrupt their bevy of attacks for a second. A second new Legion arm is this one that launches blades that would swirl around enemies for a short time, similar to the throwable saw blade item, with two differences. One, it can fire multiple blades at once to do some significant damage over time on one target, and two, with a quick press of a button before releasing the flying blade, you can change the attack completely to a set of blades that dance around P instead. great for doing solid AoE damage. When it comes to enemies shown off, this is a zoo, right? We're experiencing the Krat Zoo here. So there's going to be a bunch of different types of animals that are mutated animals, from wolves to some grabby zombies, not exactly animals, but some zombie type enemies, and even angry kangaroos and an ergo plagued elephant with a Resident Evil style surprise type of thing. But arguably the most impressive and coolest looking boss and enemy type is the enormous crocodile that you end up fighting, or at least that's how it looks in here, to complete the area, or at least part of the area. And on that note, bosses will get a new focus in the patch for the base game that will accompany Overture with 2 new game modes, Battle Memories and Death March. Death March is a straight up boss rush, allowing you to make a playlist at least 3 bosses and attempt to take them down all in one go. Battle Memories, meanwhile, allows you to return to old boss fights and attempt to beat them again, now in up to 5 different tiers of difficulty, with each tier increasing some unique stats that these bosses gain in this mode. Rewards for conquering these tiers have been hinted at, but not clarified. And that's all we got right now when it comes to some new details regarding Lies of P Overture DLC coming out soon. As far as we know, it's still supposed to be summer of this year, but no exact release date. Regardless, though, you gotta admit, Lies of P was one of the standout games of 2023, and among the best games in its action RPG subgenre not made by From Software. It's my personal favorite Souls-like game of all time that is not made by From Software. And from the looks of the footage shown off, Overture doesn't play with the formula too much, doesn't really go too out the way to, I guess, expand or, revitalize or overhaul how the combat works and some of the weapons, but at the same time offers some fun new weapons that we can hopefully have a great time customizing and just swapping out parts to see what we can make. So it being probably largely mostly the same thing, not necessarily a bad idea, but hopefully when it does get a sequel, there'll be some really cool shakeups there in terms of combat and other mechanics in the game, where this is just a nice foundation and they build upon it. Similar to how From Software took lessons they learned from Bloodborne and applied it to Dark Souls 3, for example, as well as learning from Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. Time will tell, though. We'll see what happens with this game. I'm looking forward to it when it comes to this DLC. What about you guys? Sound off in the comments below your thoughts on this. And if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, I would appreciate a like, subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys in the next video.